Greetings all, D&Disability and Tunka here. You've seen the title. Why are we talking about this again? I've mentioned in the past that I use session zeros and do check-ins after every few sessions. Well, I didn't really get to cover all the good that session zeros can do, and I didn't have Tunka with me either.
Right, because it's not official unless you have a Tunka. Well, everyone probably knows the session zero is the pregame meeting where players have to sort out characters, game rules, setting information, and discussing scheduling. Did I miss anything?
Well, I don't think the majority of us covered that in one meeting anymore. A lot of it is done in a chat room before the game. But no, it was pretty good. However, one item the Session Zero has become infamous for is setting boundaries. Personally, I don't use X cards or red flags. That said, I do make it clear to the players if they are ever uncomfortable, speak up or type a message, and we'll skip whatever's going on. Just hard skip. I'm okay with being interrupted as a DM. Session zeros also make a great time for those of us with disabilities to speak out about them. If there's no session zero, we often have to go out of our way to address this point, either pregame or, of course, in a chat room. Sometimes a simple DM to your DM is enough, but triggers need to be known, ability limitations need to be addressed, and of course, expectations should be laid out. The Session Zero is at the heart of this pre-game communication process. It has become an umbrella term for what could be maybe a week or more's worth of effectively chat room discussions or just background interactions that happen both before and during the opening session itself.
Well, I guess there's a little more to it than I thought. All right, riddle me this then, Mr. Fancy Pants. If all the players are at the table have played with each other for years, why bother with a session zero at all?
That's the big OSR player question, right? And for me, it's one where situations change, schedules, living conditions, physical and mental health, and even disability coping activities can change. Sometimes we might be available and, eager and able to do things. Other times, not so much. Here's a recent example. I committed to a game of Traveler. When the session zero was called and the timeline finally discussed, I actually had to bow out. I couldn't deal with another game at that time, even though I thought I could and I committed to it, 3, 4 months earlier. The session zero let me dip and, pull away from the game and gave the DM the chance to adjust accordingly rather than having everybody show up at the first session and be like, cool, so who do we have and what's going on?
All right, so we have our session zero. Is that it? Like it's one and done, right?
It can be. I prefer a irregular check-in, though, because let's face it, life happens. And you can get away with only doing one. Don't get me wrong. Many tables don't even do one, right? Especially the OSR crowd.
Yeah, one thing about session zeros and check ins that I don't get is the ridicule it receives from some, not all, but some in the OSR community. Even though in part of the game, even when I started playing in the early 80s, yes, I know I'm old because there would be times before the game would start where the DM would kind of check in with us and say, okay, before we start, I just want to kind of get a pulse of the table. What are you guys thinking? Is this the type of adventure you guys are wanting to run? Is everything okay? That was happening in the early 80s. As a matter of fact, session zero is where the Pretty Boys were born. And for those that don't know, the Pretty Boys was a group of cavaliers that we had rolled up, and we had decided in our session zero that the highest roles be assigned to their comeliness. Yeah, I'm that old. And intelligence was their dump stat, and we role played them like the preps from the movie Animal House. It was fun.
That actually reminds me, I almost forgot. One more thing! The session zero is where we lay out any social contract guidelines. As an example, we're going to assign our stats in X method. But put less kind of poshly, This is where we lay out the expectations of the table. That we say, don't read the monster manual and look up creatures during the game. Yes, I had a player do that. Show up on time. Try not to talk all at once so that those of us with hearing impairments don't just hear white noise, etc. I might do a dedicated video on the social contract and specifically why it's mandatory for some of us, and it really shouldn't be belittled the way it is in the OSR community, but that's a topic for another day. Really, what we're trying to do here is cut down some of this toxicity around this A, session 0, and eventually B, the social contract, because it seems like it's unmanly or unnecessary or just excess frugality in this kind of toxic internet RPG environment that exists online. And personally, I just keep a static list in the group Discord, just on a separate channel, of what the player expectations of the social contract are. They're just guiding rules. I leave them there. They don't get touched. I direct people to them, ask if they have any questions, and we move on. Takes 2 minutes, if that, you know.
Well, as an old man and as an official grognard, because I am an old man, I'm going to say this. Session zeros are a must in my book. Even for the simple fact of how else is a DM going to truly know how well the game is going from a player's point of view, right? And because session zeros and check-ins, well, they're fun because you get a chance to hang out and talk, right? And who doesn't enjoy doing that with their friends? And if you've ever been part of a session zero, smash the like and subscribe button and leave your thoughts on the comments below. We will respond. And who knows, the next great show topic could be born from a great conversation with you in the comments.
All right, y'all. It might be obvious to some, but to those who it wasn't, I hope you learned something about what makes a Session 0 useful, especially to those of us that are disabled players. As a reminder, you don't know who is disabled and who isn't unless you ask. Don't just assume everyone is the same. Life deals us all a different hand, and the vast majority of disabilities are entirely invisible. All right, take it easy.